Hello, it is Wednesday, April 22nd, 2020. Today I am reading in the book of James, and I do want to encourage you. If it has been a while since you've read the book of James, I want to encourage you to go ahead and get into the book of James. There are great practical truths for living the Christian life found in the book of James. There are times when we read our Bibles and we come across things that are more abstract in their presentation. They may be doctrines or beliefs that deal with what we ought to believe or what we ought to accept, and they seem somewhat in an abstract sense. But James is very down to earth. James is very practical. In fact, it's in the book of James that we read that faith without works is dead. And so you'll see that idea of living, practical living, coupled with a faith to make it a practical Christian life. Christian life is more than just belief. It is what we live and what we do as well. And James, again, I encourage you, it gives us a lot of good practical truth. I had my Bible notebook next to me as I was reading James today and just writing out some great truths from the book of James that have touched my heart and helped me and strengthened me this morning. And so I want to share one with you today and encourage you as well with it. In James chapter number 1, it talks about, or it starts off with the idea of trials, temptations, not temptations to sin, but testings. Temptations in the sense of testings of our faith. And James talks about testing and a practical way in which Christians ought to view testing and go through testing. So we're going to get right into the book of James chapter number 1. And we're going to begin in verse 1. Where it reads, James, a servant of God and of the Lord Jesus Christ, to the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad, greeting. My brethren, count it all joy when ye fall into diverse temptations, knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience. But let patience have her perfect work, that ye may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing, or lacking nothing, if you will. And James starts right off with a couple of thoughts. First, he reminds us that we are going to fall into what he calls here diverse temptations. Again, that's not talking about the temptation to do wrong, but rather it's talking about trials, because it goes right on to say after that, knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience. So what he's talking about here is testing times of testing. Times of trial, when we're put to the test about what it is we believe, and put to the test in our lives when we go through difficult times, when we go through struggles, when the weights are bearing down on us. James says we're going to have those times in our life. And he goes on to say not only are we going to have those, we're going to have diverse temptations, which means various, different kinds. It's not always going to be the same trial in our life. It's going to be different trials at different times and in different stages of our lives. And that's true. If you look back through your life, you'll probably see that there were seasons or times in your life that you went through difficulties. And as your life progressed and continued, you went through other difficulties, and maybe you're in one right now. And it's different or completely different from any of the other trials or tribulations or temptations through which you've ever been. Well, James gives us some encouragement here, and he gives us an injunction, and the first thing he says is, count it all joy when ye fall into diverse temptations. Now, I'll be very honest. When I'm going through a hard time in life, that is not usually the first thing that's on my mind, to rejoice or to count it joy that I'm in the middle of this difficult time. It's not. In fact, when I'm going through a difficult time, most often, I'm worried about the circumstance or focused on the circumstance or fixated on what is going on rather than rejoicing in the fact that I'm in the middle of this temptation. That's a very difficult thing to do. It requires a different perspective. To be able to rejoice in temptation or rejoice in trial or rejoice in struggle requires a different perspective about our trial and about our struggle. And so James gives us that perspective. He doesn't just tell us to do this, he gives us the perspective of it. In the very next verse, he says, knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience. I say, oh, that's great. That's wonderful. Patience, just what I need. I'm always having to be patient. I'm always having to deal with everybody else, right? Isn't that what goes through our minds? I'm always having to deal with difficult situations. Why do I need patience? I am always patient. Well, the truth of the matter is that patience is necessary in our lives, and James tells us why. And the word patience means long suffering. It means endurance, the ability to endure, like a runner, like a marathon runner going and continuing to go. It gets difficult. It's painful. It's a struggle. It's a long race. Therefore, we need that long suffering. But he tells us why in the next verse, verse number 4. But let patience have her perfect work, that ye may be perfect and entire, wanting or lacking nothing. The word perfect there doesn't mean without sin. What it means complete or whole, like he says there, wanting or entire, wanting or lacking nothing. And that is what trials do. The purpose of trials is to help me grow in an area where I am lacking in something. Let me ask you this. If I had everything in my life exactly where it needed to be, would I ever fret over any difficulty or trial that I was going through? Of course not, because I would have everything I needed, and everything would be set. In fact, I probably wouldn't consider trials to be trials at that point. Well, the reason we're going through trials in our lives is because we are not there. We're not perfect. We're not complete. We do have lack and we do have needs. And those trials remind us of those needs. I was listening to a fella speak just recently about this idea that is those times in our lives where God seems far from us that help us rejoice in those times when God is close to us. So it's sort of like the brake and the gas in your car. You need them both to get where it is you're going to go. And in our lives, we need times where we are struggling to make us more of what it is God needs us to be in our lives. So this trial that we're going through, this difficulty that we're going through is not there to destroy us. It's not there to frustrate us. It is there to show us our lack and therefore point us in the direction where we can then get what it is we need. And that's what the very next verses say. He goes on to say in verse number 5, if any of you lack wisdom. Well, if I was entire and complete and perfect and whole, I wouldn't lack wisdom, would I? But yet I'm not. Therefore I lack wisdom, don't I? If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, that giveth to all men liberally, and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him. But let him ask in faith, nothing wavering. For he that wavereth is like a wave of the sea, driven with the wind and tossed. For let not that man think that he shall receive anything of the Lord. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. So James encourages me here. What he's telling me is this. You're going to go through trials. You're going to go through difficulty. The purpose is to build patience or long suffering or endurance in your life, that you may be complete, perfect, entire, and whole. But remember, we're not. So therefore, in the midst of my trial, what I really need the most is wisdom. Wisdom to endure. Wisdom to strengthen me under the load. What do we usually ask for when we're going through a tough time? We go to the Lord and we say, Lord, could you please take this from me? Lord, could you please straighten this out? Lord, could you please provide what it is I think I need at this point? When God's telling me what I need is patience and wisdom. And if I can gain the patience I need, and if I can gain the wisdom I need, then I will get to that point in my life where I will no longer be lacking. Will I ever get there? Probably not in this lifetime. Probably not till I get to heaven. But it does give me something to remember, that even the tough times come into my life to make me a better person. God bless you, and we will see you all again very soon.